Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what happens when the irritation stops? When you simply disappear. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see every relationship in your life. According to Carl Jung, we all wear masks, what he called the persona. But here's what Jung discovered that most people never realize: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove the mask entirely. Not to reveal your true face, but to reveal your absence. There comes a moment in life when being present is no longer powerful. It's your absence that starts to speak volumes. Not the kind of absence where you sulk in shadows hoping someone notices, but the kind where you walk away, not in anger, but in power. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if I told you that sometimes becoming who you truly are requires disappearing from who you used to be for others? You've given enough. You've stayed enough. You've explained, repeated, waited enough. And yet some people still treated you like background noise in their main event. So you vanish. No announcement, no warning, just silence. Carl Jung discovered something profound about human psychology: what you resist persists, but what you accept transforms. But here's the twist: sometimes what transforms people isn't your presence, it's your absence. And in that silence, something magical happens. They start to feel the void. The comfort is gone. The energy you brought, the warmth, the understanding, it's missing. And suddenly they start to realize you weren't just there. You were valuable. And now you're not. Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances: if there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when one substance simply removes itself from the equation? The answer will surprise you. This isn't about ego. This is about self-worth. The moment you stop fighting for space in people's lives, you find your own. You don't teach people to respect you by always being available. You teach them by showing what life feels like without you. According to Carl Jung, there's a collective unconscious, shared patterns of behavior that exist across all humanity. And one of the most universal patterns: taking consistent love for granted. But here's what Jung never explicitly said, but his work implies: the antidote to being taken for granted isn't more giving, it's strategic withdrawal. Human beings have this odd tendency. They don't often recognize the value of something when it's easily accessible. A kind word, a thoughtful gesture, your emotional support, your time, it all gets chalked up as ordinary if it comes too freely and too frequently. Jung believed that your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. But what if looking inside means looking away from them? And when people get used to the luxury of your constant presence, they forget that it was never promised. It was a choice. Your choice. You chose to be there, to invest, to care. And the moment you stop, it's like a silent earthquake. Carl Jung's concept of individuation, becoming your authentic self, often requires what he called the dark night of the soul. But sometimes, that darkness isn't about facing your demons. It's about removing your light from places that don't appreciate it. You don't have to slam doors or burn bridges to be heard. In fact, sometimes noise drowns out meaning. What really captures attention is when someone who was once deeply present becomes a ghost. Not because they were angry or bitter, but because they simply realized their presence was being taken for granted. Jung discovered that the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. But what happens when you make the conscious choice to change someone else's fate by removing yourself from it? That quiet withdrawal hits differently. It's clean. It's sharp. And it doesn't need justification. It's in that moment of absence when everything shifts. According to Carl Jung, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here's the deeper truth: everything that others take for granted about us can lead them to an understanding of what they've lost. People begin to feel the impact of your presence by its lack. They notice the silence where your voice used to be. They scroll through their messages and realize you haven't checked in. They hear something exciting and instinctively think of you, then remember you're no longer there. Jung said that, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But equally terrifying for others? Accepting that you've completely removed yourself from their life. That absence is like a mirror, reflecting back the gap they never noticed when you were right in front of them. Think about it, when you're constantly available, it can be hard for others to grasp the effort you're making. Carl Jung discovered that we all have an anima, the feminine aspect in men, and animus, the masculine aspect in women. But here's what most people don't understand: when you're always available, you become neither, you become invisible. The beauty of absence is that it restores balance. It reclaims your energy. It stops the endless loop of overextending yourself for people who never stop to ask, "Are you okay?" or "Do you need anything?" Jung believed that, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who you truly are sometimes means unbecoming who you were for people who never deserved that version of you. And more than that, it gives them the space to reflect, to sit with the silence and wonder, why did they leave? Why don't I hear from them anymore? Was I truly appreciating what I had? According to Carl Jung, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But sometimes the pain that leads to consciousness isn't yours to bear, it's theirs to feel through your absence. Absence forces reflection. And reflection, when it's real, leads to growth. Not always immediately. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes months. But eventually, if a person is self-aware enough, they'll come face to face with their own neglect. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." But what about what happens to others when you choose to become unavailable to them? They'll see where they fell short, where they mistook consistency for convenience, where they stopped appreciating the heart you were giving so freely. But that's not your job anymore. Your job isn't to wait for them to get it. Your job is to know your worth, with or without their recognition. Carl Jung discovered that, the gold is in the dark places. But sometimes the gold isn't found in the darkness of trauma, it's found in the darkness of your absence from toxic situations. Silence, in this case, is not about punishment. It's about peace. You don't disappear to make someone suffer. You disappear to protect your spirit. You create space not to provoke, but to preserve what's left of you after giving too much to people who gave too little. Jung believed that, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. But what if the biggest barrier was your inability to walk away from those who don't reciprocate it? And in that space, something incredible happens. You grow. You stop performing. You stop over-explaining. You stop shrinking yourself to be more palatable. You finally breathe. According to Carl Jung, the shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. But what about the collective shadow of how we treat good people? Your absence forces them to face that shadow. And they, those who used to have access to you, begin to suffocate a little in your absence. They feel the weight of your silence, the absence of your energy, the lack of your presence. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But when you make the conscious choice to leave, you're no longer their fate, you're their lesson. If they really cared, they won't just miss you. They'll change. But again, that's not your concern, because letting them feel your absence isn't about proving anything. It's about trusting that your presence was never ordinary, that your kindness was never owed, that your loyalty was something they should have treasured. Carl Jung discovered that, the most important question anyone can ask is, what myth am I living? But here's the question that will change your life: what myth were you living for people who saw you as a supporting character? Never beg for attention or validation. The moment you find yourself explaining your worth to someone, you've already given them too much power. True strength is built quietly, not in the desperate cry to be seen, but in the quiet act of walking away and letting your absence speak for itself. Jung believed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But everything that others lose about us can lead them to an understanding of what they had. There's something extraordinary about a person who stops chasing others and starts investing that same energy into their own evolution. That's when everything changes. According to Carl Jung, we wear masks called personas to fit into society. But what if the most authentic thing you can do is remove yourself from spaces where you have to wear a mask to be accepted? We live in a world where noise is mistaken for value, where the loudest voice in the room gets attention, and the one who gives the most is often overlooked. People are drawn to novelty, not consistency. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who you truly are might mean disappointing people who fell in love with your mask. You could be loyal for years, show up in 100 ways, and still be treated like a placeholder if you're too available. That's the bitter truth. Carl Jung discovered synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences that seem to happen when we're aligned with our true path. But here's a synchronicity most people miss: the moment you stop chasing others, they start chasing you. But once you begin to understand that your energy is currency, something that should be spent with intention, you stop giving it away to those who don't even realize what they're receiving. Jung believed that, where your fear is, there is your task. But what if your task isn't to overcome the fear of being alone, but to overcome the fear of being valued? The beauty of knowing your worth is that you no longer need to announce it. You show it through your boundaries, your silence, your refusal to settle for crumbs when you've been serving full-course meals. According to Carl Jung, we're most attractive when we embody both our masculine and feminine energies. But here's what he didn't explicitly say: you're most magnetic when you're no longer trying to be magnetic. When you stop being always around, always giving, they looked through you. But now, with your absence, they're finally forced to look for you. It's a strange phenomenon how your silence becomes louder than all your previous efforts combined. Jung discovered that, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances: if there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when you remove yourself from the equation entirely? You didn't need to argue, to explain, to beg for respect. You simply pulled back, and in doing so, you created a vacuum. The kind of absence that makes people question themselves. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But equally powerful, making others accept that you're no longer completely available to them. By then, you've already detached, not just physically, but emotionally. You've outgrown the space where you were once undervalued. You're no longer interested in convincing anyone of your worth. Jung believed that, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. But sometimes looking into your heart means looking away from theirs. You've moved on to a new reality where your presence is not a given. It's a privilege. And the people who truly value you will feel that shift. According to Carl Jung, true transformation happens in the depths of solitude. But here's what most people don't realize: your solitude can transform others too, through the echo of your absence. The truth is, you don't elevate your value by doing more for people. You elevate it by doing less for the wrong ones. By not showing up where you're unappreciated, by choosing peace over pleasing. Jung discovered that, what you resist persists, but what you accept transforms. But what transforms people faster than anything? Accepting that you're no longer available to their resistance to change. Because the more you show up for people who don't reciprocate, the more you teach them that you can be neglected and you'll still stay. That your love doesn't require respect, that your presence doesn't require effort. According to Jung, individuation, becoming whole, integrated, and authentic, is the ultimate goal of personal growth. However, he also discovered a crucial truth: you can't become whole while giving pieces of yourself to people who scatter them. When you constantly prioritize others' needs over your own, you're sacrificing your own wholeness. When you stop showing up or dial back your involvement, you're forcing others to recalibrate. The emotional math changes, and suddenly, you're no longer the easy option, the backup plan, or the safety net they took for granted. You're no longer the one who's always available to rescue them. Jung beautifully said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And sometimes, becoming who you truly are requires disappearing from the person others expected you to be. It means embracing your authenticity, even if it means letting go of relationships or dynamics that no longer serve you. Your absence can be a powerful catalyst for change. Let others feel the silence, sit with it, and finally understand what they had, now that they've lost it. Your absence isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one where you're destined to become the person you were always meant to be. So, take a step back, prioritize your own needs, and let your absence be the spark that ignites your journey toward wholeness and authenticity. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.